The incoming Biden administration is facing the surmounting challenge of containing Iran's nuclear capabilities. A new report from the International Atomic Energy Agency reveals that Iran now has 12 times the amount of enriched uranium permitted under the 2015 Iranian nuclear deal. Under the accord, Iran vowed to limit the country's nuclear capabilities and allow international inspections of its facilities in order to lift crippling economic sanctions. However, in 2018, President Trump announced that the U.S. would be leaving the deal in an effort to reimpose sanctions on Tehran. Iranian officials insist the program is strictly for peaceful purposes, and they have never aimed to achieve nuclear capabilities. Dr. Ernest Moniz is the former United States Secretary of Energy and the co-chair and CEO of the Nuclear Threat Initiative. We are pleased to have him join me now. Secretary Moniz, thank you for joining us. So what does the expansion of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium mean for the country's nuclear capabilities and for the security of the United States and the international community?
Well, first, Lana, to put it in perspective, before the JCPOA was signed, Iran had more than 30 times the limit put in the JCPOA. And furthermore, had some uranium enriched up to 20%. Currently, as you say, they're about 12 times over the limit. They are at 4.5% enrichment. So it's not where it was, but nevertheless, the key issue is it clearly has limited what was called the breakout time very, very substantially.
Well, how did the U.S. fail to keep Iran's program in check?
Well, I think the JCPOA put it in check. The U.S. withdrawal has what's led to Iran's violation of the nuclear constraints. However, I think it's very important, frankly, the most important point to emphasize is that even with this expansion of the enriched uranium, obviously this is not a good development. However, we are in no sense back to where we were in 2015 because the verification requirements on Iran are very tough, and they have fundamentally stayed in place. So it's very key that they have more uranium. That's not good, but we pretty much know that right now, at least, they are not reconstituting a weapons program.
Yeah, I think that that's an important point. Enriched uranium is not necessarily an equivalent to a nuclear program. But Secretary Moniz, you're partial to the Iran nuclear deal. Obviously, during your time with the Obama administration, you played a key role in negotiating the 2015 agreement. Do you think that the Biden administration should try to have Iran return to that agreement? Or since the last administration, or the current, I should say, the current Trump administration has removed the United States over concerns that they had with the deal, is the Biden administration now starting again from scratch?
Well, I think it's very important to understand exactly what the unhappiness expressed with the deal was. Frankly, it was not so much unhappiness with the deal as opposed to what the deal was not. Namely, it did not include the other issues of great concern, like missiles, like human rights violations, and of course, Iran's various activities in the region with Yemen and Iraq and Syria and Hezbollah. So the President, Obama, made the decision, I think the correct one, to first get an agreement that was strictly on the existential threat of nuclear weapons, and then have that in place for many, many years and have verification measures in place, in some cases, forever. Know that they're not doing a nuclear weapons program, but certainly don't relax on pushing back on the other issues. Now, others, including President Trump, decided that they didn't like the deal without those other issues in place. I think for President Biden, President-elect Biden, he has made clear that he does intend to go back into the agreement, assuming compliance is restored fully. But I believe also, and this is not only a personal belief, but I believe it has to be viewed as the platform to then negotiating with our European, Russian, and Chinese partners, negotiating some of those other issues, particularly on some of the regional issues, which does provide risk to our friends. In fact, another evolution since the 2015, of course, is the agreement between the Emirates and the Israelis, for example. And I hope that when President Biden does re-enter the negotiation with Iran, I hope that, frankly, this time the Gulf states and Israel will be more active in discussing with the United States how a new agreement should be expanded.
That would be interesting if Israel were to be on board with these negotiations. I'm wondering how much you think you might be involved in any of these negotiations. Your name has come up as a possible pick for Secretary of Energy under a Biden administration. I want to get it straight from you. Have you spoken with President-elect Biden or his administration about the role? And how would you feel about stepping back into that position?
Look, I'm the CEO of two nonprofits, one in the energy climate space, one in the nuclear space, the Nuclear Threat Initiative, and these organizations will actively do what we can as NGOs to support the directions that we agree with in the president-elect's platform on both climate and on nuclear security issues, including Iran.
So I hear from that answer that you stand ready to serve the president-elect, whether in the administration or out of it. Though to the obvious question that I asked, I'm going to follow back up on it. Have you spoken with Mr. Biden about the potential of joining his cabinet?
Look, I'm not trying to be coy, but it's not appropriate to discuss personal discussions. I would just say that over the course of the campaign for the president-elect and for actually some other candidates as well, we were always available to provide the best advice we could when asked about particular questions where our expertise would be applicable in both the climate and the nuclear arenas.
Understood. Speaking of the climate, President-elect Joe Biden has promised to shift to cleaner, reusable energy. He said that the U.S. will re-enter the Paris Climate Agreement on his first day in office, but he also said that he would not ban fracking and tried to thread the needle with natural gas, coal, and oil workers in several of those swing states. What are the biggest issues his administration will have to tackle in order to combat climate change?
Well, first of all, one of the boundary conditions remains to be set, namely who's in the majority in the Senate. And of course, that will not be resolved until the Georgia runoff elections in January the 5th. But I think the president-elect's platform, first of all, it has some very specific targets like net zero emissions by mid-century. To reach that, I think it's very, very clear that we will need to supercharge our innovation in order to have the tools to do that. Those tools must be a complete toolbox. And I think that's the issue where the vice president's platform indicated that we were not going to throw out any of the tools that might be part of the zero carbon solution. But also in getting there, he emphasized the important role of social equity concerns, frontline communities, but also, very importantly, jobs and workers. So I think that this administration is going to weave together those threads, getting the energy transition to low carbon to happen aggressively, but at the same time, making sure that we're not stranding workers, stranding communities, because we need them to come along to have a solution. It's a tough climb. No one is disputing that reaching something like net zero emissions in 30 years is easy, but it can be done. And I think that the president-elect is very well positioned for that, not only because of a commitment to innovation, but also because he has a history of building coalitions and coalitions of labor and business and NGOs and financial institutions and military and religious leaders, Republicans and Democrats. I think we're going to need that to move smartly on climate change. And I think the president-elect is very, very well positioned to do that.
All right. Secretary Ernest Moniz, thank you for coming on and talking to us.
Okay. Thank you, Lana.